Every tourist at Buckingham Palace dreams of getting the perfect photo. Most settle for a selfie. But Jake Lawson? He wanted something more. After watching the royal guards stand motionless for over an hour, he got a brilliant idea. What if I pretended to be one of them? Like for a prank? Just blend in, right next to them. His friends laughed, the crowd watched, and Jake walked straight into disaster. What he didn't know was that the King's Guard doesn't tolerate mockery, and before the day was over, Jake would go from imitating a soldier to face down on the pavement, humiliated, arrested, and trending worldwide, because when the real royal guards finally reacted, they made damn sure he never forgot it. Buckingham Palace stood glorious under the midday sun, its golden gates shimmering as tourists gathered in awe. For most, this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, a chance to witness the unshakable discipline of the Royal Guard, to snap photos, and maybe even catch a glimpse of the King's residence. For Jake Lawson, however, it was an opportunity to go viral. Jake and his two best friends, Ethan and Kyle, were nearing the end of their week-long London trip. They had done all the typical tourist stuff, Big Ben, Tower Bridge, the pubs, but now they wanted to leave with something legendary, something no one else had done. And as they stood watching the royal guards, stiff and unwavering, clad in their crimson jackets and towering bearskin hats, Jake got a brilliantly stupid idea. "Bro, what if I became one of them?" Ethan frowned. "Huh?" Kyle grinned instantly. "No way. Like, stand next to them?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, just walk up, stand still like them. Act like I'm part of the group. Blend in." Kyle snorted. "You'd look so dumb." Jake smirked. "Dumb or viral?" Ethan hesitated. "Man, I don't know. The guards don't mess around." Jake rolled his eyes. "Come on, dude. They don't move. They literally just stand there. What are they gonna do? Arrest me for standing?" Kyle was already pulling out his phone. "Bro, I'm filming this. If you get tackled, I'm selling this footage." Jake laughed, cracking his knuckles. "All right, boys. Time to make history." Jake took a deep breath and casually stepped away from the tourist barricade, striding toward the line of royal guards standing in formation. A few people in the crowd noticed immediately. A couple of tourists muttered to each other, nudging their friends. One guy whispered, "Oh, he's about to get in trouble." A British woman nearby shook her head. "Another one? These Americans never learn." But Jake? He was too focused on the cameras. With each step, his confidence grew. He reached the end of the row of guards and, without hesitation, stood at attention, feet together, hands stiff by his sides. He had officially joined the King's Guard, or so he thought. At first, nothing happened. The guards remained motionless, rifles in hand, eyes locked forward. The tourists? They loved it. Phones came out. People were pointing, laughing. A teenage girl near the front giggled. "Oh my God! He actually did it!" Kyle and Ethan were crying with laughter, filming every second. Kyle. "Dude, you're blending in perfectly." Jake smirked, still holding the pose. "Told you, they don't even care." And for about 10 seconds, it seemed like he had gotten away with it. But then, something changed. Jake felt it before he heard it. A shift in the air, a sudden presence near him. Then, thump! A boot slammed onto the pavement, the clank of a rifle shifting slightly. And then, a voice so booming, so sharp, it shattered the air like a gunshot. "Step away!" Jake's soul left his body. The crowd gasped in unison. Someone in the back screamed, "Oh, shti!" Kyle's phone nearly slipped out of his hands. Ethan's mouth fell open. And Jake? Jake flinched so hard he almost lost balance, because the guard closest to him had moved. Not just moved, stepped toward him, turned his head slightly, fixed him with an ice-cold, unblinking stare. Jake's mind went completely blank. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was a real soldier. And he was not amused. The worst part? The guard wasn't done yet. Jake's cocky smirk vanished. His whole plan had relied on one idea, that the guards didn't react to anything, that they were just statues in uniforms. But now he was standing inches from a trained military professional whose posture was razor sharp, his grip on his rifle deadly firm. Jake swallowed hard. The crowd was whispering, murmuring, waiting for what would happen next. Kyle, still filming, muttered, "Dude, back up." Ethan was pale. "Yeah, bro. Now." Jake knew they were right. He had to move, get out while he still could, but before he could even take a step, the guard moved again, faster, more aggressive, and this time, there was no way out. Jake's brain went blank as the Royal Guard moved again, faster this time, with military precision. The sound of his boot hitting the pavement was like a gunshot in Jake's ears. Every instinct in his body screamed, "Move, now!" But it was already too late, because when the King's Guard reacts, you don't get a second chance. "Step away!" The guard's booming voice ripped through the air, sending a shockwave of silence through the entire square. Jake's body locked up. The tourists watching? They lost their minds. A guy in the crowd was already yelling, "Holy shit, he's screwed!" A woman covered her mouth, whispering, "I've never seen one move before." A kid tugged on his dad's sleeve. "Daddy, is the silly man in trouble?" And Kyle? Kyle was still filming, wheezing with laughter. "Dude, you just got yelled at by the British military." Ethan? He wasn't laughing anymore. "Bro, walk away. Right now." But Jake? Jake did the worst possible thing. He froze. Jake's brain short-circuited. He didn't mean to hesitate, didn't mean to look back at the crowd, didn't mean to let his ego override his survival instincts. But when hundreds of people are watching, cameras flashing, and your friends are filming every second, panic makes you stupid. So instead of immediately stepping back, Jake saluted. A mocking, exaggerated salute, right in the guard's face. And at that moment, Jake knew he had just signed his own death warrant. The Royal Guard didn't hesitate for even a second, because in that moment, Jake wasn't just an annoying tourist anymore. He had disrespected a soldier on duty, a man who had trained for years in discipline, precision, and protection, a man whose job wasn't to be a statue for Jake's amusement, but a defender of Buckingham Palace itself. And now Jake was officially a problem. Thump! The guard took a full step forward, his rifle shifting slightly, his entire presence radiating authority. The air changed instantly. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This was escalation. The tourists, dead silent. Ethan and Kyle, no longer laughing. And Jake? Jake finally did what he should have done minutes ago. He tried to back away, tried to escape the disaster he had created, but in his panic, he tripped. Jake's heel caught the curb. His balance vanished, and in one glorious slow-motion moment of pure karma, he toppled backward. The crowd gasped. His friends screamed. And Jake? Jake didn't just fall. He fell backward into another Royal Guard. A direct collision. Contact. The worst possible thing that could happen. Jake didn't even have time to process what he had done before everything erupted, because the moment his body collided with the second guard, all hell broke loose. The guard reacted instantly, military training kicking in. With one swift motion, Jake was flipped, pinned, and immobilized. His arms twisted behind his back, his chest slammed against the pavement, the weight of a trained soldier holding him down. The crowd? Screaming, cheering, recording everything. A guy in the front row shouted, "Oh my God, he's actually getting taken down!" Another laughed. "Bro thought this was a game!" Jake, winded, face pressed against the pavement, finally understood. He hadn't just pushed his luck. He had thrown it off a cliff. And now? Now, the Metropolitan Police were already on their way, and his nightmare was just getting started. Jake's face was pressed against the cold pavement, his brain scrambling to process what had just happened. One moment he had been mocking a royal guard. The next, he was pinned to the ground by one, his arms twisted behind his back, his ribs aching from the impact. And worst of all, the entire world was watching. The second Jake hit the ground, the crowd exploded. Tourists screamed, gasped, and howled with laughter. Phones zoomed in from every angle. The reactions were merciless. "Holy sh! He just got taken out!" Kyle, still filming, barely able to breathe from laughing, yelled, "Jake, you just got drafted into the floor, bro!" Ethan? Ethan had stopped laughing. His eyes were wide. "Dude, I think this is serious." And he was right. Because Jake wasn't just pinned. He was being detained. The royal guard who tackled Jake? He didn't speak, didn't gloat, didn't even acknowledge the chaos exploding around them. He simply held Jake in place, perfectly composed, waiting for the next step. Because to him, this wasn't personal. This was protocol. And Jake? Jake wasn't a prankster anymore. He was a security threat. Then, Jake heard it. Heavy, fast footsteps approaching, boots hitting the pavement in perfect rhythm. And he already knew who it was. The Metropolitan Police. He tried to turn his head, but before he could, a firm hand gripped his collar and yanked him up. Jake was hauled onto his feet, still dazed, his arms now locked behind his back by an officer. The crowd gasped again. More phones zoomed in. This was no longer just a viral video moment. This was a full-blown arrest. The first officer, a broad-shouldered man with a sharp jawline, tilted his head slightly, studying Jake. Then, with a flat, unimpressed tone, he muttered, "Right. And what exactly did we think we were doing today, mate?" Jake gulped. I was just joking, man. It was just a prank." The officer let out the deepest sigh in human history. Ah, a prank. Fantastic. Because nothing says good laugh like interfering with the royal guard on duty. Jake stayed silent. The second officer, a woman with a tight bun and zero patience, stepped forward. "You are aware that touching, obstructing, or interfering with an active duty royal guard is a criminal offense, yeah?" Kyle, still filming, whispered, "Bro, you might actually get deported." Jake's stomach plummeted. This was so much worse than he expected. The first officer clicked his radio. "We've got one detained at Buckingham. Suspect attempted to disrupt the guard. Moving him now." Jake panicked. Wait. I'll leave. I swear. I was just..." The officer started leading him away. Through the crowd, through the sea of phones capturing every humiliating second. The same people who had been cheering, laughing, and filming just minutes ago. Now they were narrating his downfall in real time. Damn, he's really getting taken in. A British teenager in the crowd casually muttered, "Ah, another American tourist learning the hard way." And the group around him burst into laughter. Jake's face burned, and just when he thought it couldn't possibly get worse, a 6-year-old boy in a bright blue raincoat pointed at him and said, "Mommy, that man made a really bad decision, didn't he?" His mother nodded. "Yes, darling, he really, really did." The crowd erupted. Jake? Jake wanted to teleport into the sun. As Jake was being escorted away, he dared one last look behind him, at the royal guard who had tackled him, at the same man who had just taken him down with military precision. And what was he doing now? Standing back in position, perfect posture, eyes forward, completely unbothered, as if Jake had never existed. And somehow, That was the worst part of all. By the time Jake was thrown into the back of the police car, his phone was blowing up. Kyle and Ethan were texting him memes of his own failure in real time. One of them had already been edited with the caption, "When you try to join the King's Guard but get drafted to the floor instead." Jake? Jake knew his life was over. And the worst part? The video was still uploading. Tomorrow, the whole world would see it, and he would never live it down. Jake sat in the back of the police car, his wrists still aching from the brief moment of being manhandled by British law enforcement. His mind was spinning, not just from the embarrassment, not just from the pain of his failed stunt, but because he already knew what was coming next, and it had nothing to do with the police station. By the time the car turned the corner, Jake's phone was vibrating nonstop, dozens, hundreds, thousands of notifications. His entire social media feed was drowning in tags, mentions, and messages. The video, the one of him trying to blend in with the Royal Guard, getting humiliated, tackled, and arrested, was already viral. And the internet? The internet was not being kind. Jake opened his phone, praying that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't as bad as he thought. Nope, it was worse. The comment section was a war zone. "My guy thought he was in a Mr. Bean skit and got folded in 4K. Jake scrolled further, his soul slowly leaving his body. The memes had already started. Some of the worst ones? A freeze frame of Jake mid-fall with the caption, "The moment he knew, he fed up." A dramatic slow-motion video replaying the tackle while the Titanic music played in the background. A screenshot of the Royal Guard standing perfectly still after the takedown, captioned, "Still undefeated, still unbothered." And then, the worst one. Someone had edited his entire fall into a Mortal Kombat fight, complete with health bars and a "finish him" sound effect. Jake let out an actual groan. There was no coming back from this. Jake tried to avoid it. Tried to convince himself that this was just another quick viral clip that would die out by tomorrow. But then, a notification popped up. A news headline. A real news headline. BBC News. Tourist tries to mock King's Guard. Gets put in his place instantly. Jake froze. Then another. Lad Bible. Man challenges Buckingham Palace tradition, loses faster than anyone in history. And then, the worst one. The Guardian. When clout chasing goes horribly wrong, a lesson in British military discipline. Jake's face drained of color. This wasn't just internet viral. This was worldwide humiliation, and it was getting worse. Then, just when he thought he'd hit rock bottom, the late-night comedians got involved. Jimmy Fallon played the video on The Tonight Show. He grinned at the screen. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet the first person in history to lose a fight to a guy who wasn't even fighting." The audience screamed. Stephen Colbert smirked, shaking his head. "Tourists come to London for the history. This guy came for a life lesson." The audience exploded. Trevor Noah barely held back laughter. He walked up like he was about to be a legend. Instead, he became an example. The crowd lost it. And Jake? Jake wanted to die. His phone rang. Mom calling. Jake stared at the screen. He took a deep breath and picked up. Jake Alexander Lawson. Full name, immediate red flag. "What? The hell? Did you do?" Jake winced. "Mom, it's not as bad as it looks. Your grandma saw it, Jake. On the news. She called me asking if you're in jail." Jake groaned. "Grandma saw it?" "Yes, Jake. Everyone saw it." In the background, his dad muttered, "Damn, son. You really got folded like that?" Jake rubbed his temples. This wasn't just an internet joke anymore. This was family shame, and that never fades. Just when Jake thought he had officially hit rock bottom, a new email notification popped up. Subject: Jake, we need to talk. His heart sank. It was from his boss. He opened it. Jake, I assume you've seen the video by now, so have some of our clients. We need to discuss this first thing Monday morning. Jake's stomach flipped. This wasn't just an embarrassing video anymore. This was ruining his career. Back at Buckingham Palace, the royal guard stood tall, rifle in position, face emotionless, still standing, still unshaken, still legendary. Because to him, Jake wasn't even worth remembering. But to the internet, Jake would be remembered forever. Because while the guard had already moved on, the internet never would. Jake sat in his hotel room, staring at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. The past 24 hours had been a living nightmare. He had gone from a tourist enjoying London to an international punchline. And now he was watching his life crumble in real time. The original video had already exploded online. But now it was everywhere. 50 million views on TikTok. Trending #1 on Twitter, X. Front page of Reddit's r// public freakout. News stations airing it worldwide. Jake's face, his terrified, stumbling, full of regret face, was now a permanent piece of internet history. And the comments? Pure destruction. And just when he thought it couldn't possibly get worse, the actual news stations started roasting him. BBC News. A tourist attempted to mock the royal guard today. He instead became the most famous failure of the week. LAD Bible. Man tries to join the king's guard, ends up in a headlock instead. The Guardian. One tourist, one royal guard, one massive mistake. And then the late-night talk shows got involved. Jimmy Fallon, showing the clip on The Tonight Show, nearly crying from laughter. Oh man, you know it's bad when the guard didn't even have to try. He just existed. And this guy lost. The audience exploded. Stephen Colbert shaking his head. This wasn't a prank. This was a self-inflicted disaster. The audience lost it. Trevor Noah barely holding it together. He walked in confident. And he left. A lesson. Jake wanted to throw his phone across the room. There was no escaping this. And then his dad called. Jake hesitated, then answered. Hey, Dad. His father sighed deeply. Son, we sent you to London for culture, not to get tackled by a British soldier on national television. Jake winced. Your uncle saw it. Your grandma saw it. Your mom's church group saw it. Jake closed his eyes. Not the church group. His dad let out a low chuckle. Yep. Sister Margaret sent your mom a prayer for your recovery. You're officially on a prayer list. Jake wanted to disappear, and just when he thought he couldn't sink any lower, an email notification popped up. Subject: Jake, we need to talk. His stomach dropped. It was from his boss. He opened it. Jake, I assume you've seen the video by now, so have some of our clients. We need to discuss how this affects the company's image. Let's talk Monday. Jake rubbed his temples. He had ruined his career. Because of a prank. Because of a royal guard. Because of 1 second of pure stupidity. Back at Buckingham Palace, the royal guard stood motionless once again. Still standing, still unshaken, still legendary. Because to him, Jake wasn't even worth remembering. But to the internet, Jake would be remembered forever. Because while the guard had already moved on, the internet never would.